Dion, do you have any questions that you want to kind of start off with? Anything that you were wondering about? Could be anything.
Uh, yeah, like I said before we started, let's get to like the Islamic Golden Age, and yeah, let's talk about that things surrounding that, what made it the Golden Age, and yeah.
Okay, bet. So, what made it the Islamic Golden Age? It's a combination of multiple facets, right? It's the unparalleled dominance of the time. And also, in combination with that, oftentimes it's associated with the decline of the Western world, or like the pre Western world, essentially, the pre imperialist Western world. So it involves like the taking of Jerusalem in 636, which is pre-Abbasid, but it still involves keeping Jerusalem, right? Which is the jewel of the Middle East in some cases, or at least in regards to like the Western perspective on it, it is the jewel. Um, and then it involves like just the overall success of the time, the economic success of the time, the territorial success of the time, the span of the Abbasid Empire itself, and then just the lack of competition. Like there just wasn't anybody to compete with the Abbasids at the time. And then it leads up kind of to the decline, and all the way to the decline, and I believe it's 1123 is the decline of the Abbasids. But yeah, that's just. Do you have any questions, like specifically, like what occurred within the Islamic Golden Age itself?
Yeah, so like we see the capturing of Jerusalem. I believe also was it Antioch and Constantinople as well, or was that a
Well,
different time period?
Constantinople comes much later, right? That's with Murad the First, right?
Okay.
Who takes Constantinople? Or is it Murad the First? Am I getting my? I think I'm getting my sultans mixed up. Mehmed the Second. I don't know why I said Murad the First. Mehmed the Second is the one who takes Constantinople. That's much afterwards, right? That's way, way afterwards. The golden age of the Abbasids. The golden age of the Abbasids primarily occurs prior to the First Crusade, right? And then the taking of Constantinople, as you know, happens after the decline of Constantinople in the 15th century. 15th century, yeah. So
Okay.
there's a big like disconnect between those two things. Like
So
all the yeah.
within the golden age, basically, it was good economic status. Like it wasn't too many poor people, right? Like everybody was, basically wealthy in a sense. Would you say?
Pretty much, yeah, like a pretty solid standard of living. The creation
Hmm.
of like multiple avenues for people just to be successful, or not really. I won't say successful, but people to live in comfort. Essentially, was
Comfort.
like,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Would you
right.
say this is in Western terms like is this like socialist? Is it democratic? What would you
So
say?
it's Islamic and it's theocracy, right? So it's a theocracy is what the Western terminology term for it would be, right? And that's the closest that we've got to it. If you really want to take like a super Western perspective on it, which we wouldn't apply to it, it would be more of like a socialist leading
Okay. Not
solution.
fully socialist, but like close to that, right?
Yeah, because obviously
Okay.
socialism hadn't been invented yet. Like the concept of it wasn't even really like in anybody's mind at the time.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't socialist. You can call it like kind of socialist derivative, but even to call it derivative would mean that socialism would have to pre-exist. So it's not really
Yeah.
socialist. We wouldn't call it that. But you can say that elements of socialism are definitely existent within the Abbasid Caliphate for sure.
Okay. Okay. So within the golden age, we obviously see Muslims living in comfort. Um, Pretty good time for the Muslim Empire.
Not just Muslims,
How would
it's for Christians and Jews as well.
that? That's what I was about to get into. So, how would you say, in regards to the Golden Age, how did Christians and Jews, how did they live there? Specifically, Christians, because I myself am a Christian.
Mhm.
How did they live within the Golden Age, and did they also live comfortably? Were there any like let's say crimes like from Christians like committing against this? Was there any like persecutions in regards to this? What would you have to say to that?
Yeah, so in regards to like crimes and persecute, of course, there's going to be crimes committed by people, right? That's just something that happens everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course there were crimes committed, but was there like a specific persecution of Christian populations during the Islamic Golden Period? No, not in particular,
Okay.
or against Jewish populations? No, not at
Okay.
all. You don't really find that, right? Jews and Christians lived in harmony within Jerusalem up until the First Crusade, when Jerusalem gets taken back. Um, which wasn't underneath the Abbasid Caliphate, but just is nice to note, right? The end of the reign of the Abbasids, at least, the Jews and Christians lived pretty much in harmony with the Muslims in Jerusalem and in like the primary points where they existed, like for example Damascus, right? Damascus, they lived in pretty much harmony.
Syria, yeah.
Exactly. Within
Yeah.
the greater Syria area, they lived in harmony. Within the Palestinian area, they lived in harmony. Within pretty much every area of Abbasid control, there was harmonization between Jews, Muslims, and Christians.
Okay. Okay. Um so in regards to the jurisprudence, because it would be a theocracy, right? Are there any difference in regards to, let's say, jurisprudence between like Muslims and Christians? Are there like difference, for example, like let's say you have a Muslim who's starving and a Christian who's starving. Who are you gonna feed first, or does it not matter who you feed first and you're allowed to pick anybody?
So it's definitely a more of a put your own life jacket on before you put on someone else's, for sure. Like within any population, that's just going to be the case, right? Like you're going to help those who are in your jurisdiction and whom you have
Hmm.
access to, right? Even in regards to like governorship, like in the Abbasid Caliphate, you find Jews who had government positions. You find Christians who had some level of government position, right? So there's not really this case where it's like they were excluded from the government process and therefore it's only an Islamic decision to make decisions for people, right? You have local councils that are primarily based out of the church and primarily based out of religious institutions that make decisions for their communities, and that's how it exists throughout the pretty much the entire Islamic paradigm, right? Even in the Ottoman Empire in the 16th century, you have a Joseph Duke by the name of a Joseph Duke, a Jewish Duke by the name of Joseph Nasi, who was one of the advisors to, I want to say it's Bayezid II. I gotta double check that on the caliph itself, but I know the gentleman's name was Joseph Nasi, and he was a Jewish duke, and he had access. He was actually given permission by the Ottoman emperor of the time. I believe it's Bayezid II to build a Jewish settlement in Palestine. So, in what is Palestine, it was actually Tiberius, where he was given the authority to build a Jewish settlement in 7 towns. He was given those towns as a duke to go and build like Jewish settlements. So you'll find like the Islamic paradigm throughout not just the Ottoman Empire, but the Abbasid, the Rashidun Caliphate, the Umayyad Caliphate. There was a lot of leeway given to Jewish and Christian populations to kind of self-govern and have like the ability to govern in some capacity.
Okay, okay.